everyone, and welcome to the 5th episode in our AI and You podcast series. Today is Monday, August 10th, 2020, and I'm your host, Vicar Saidi. I'm a computer scientist and engineer, a lecturer and a consultant. I'm also the author of several books. My most recent book is about artificial intelligence and is titled The Genome Affair. The Genome Affair is a work of speculative fiction. It examines what the world might be like if some of the more extraordinary capabilities forecast to be realized in AI over the next 20 or 30 years were actually realized today. Given the growing list of frightening existential threats humankind now faces, the book pays particular attention to the impact AI is expected to have on world affairs. The book is available in ebook format for those who prefer to read on a digital device, but it's also available in a high-quality paperback edition. The Genome Affair is available on Amazon, so I hope you'll take the time to read it and to leave a review. Book reviews are very helpful for writers. And now, on to today's podcast. In our last podcast, episode 4, I offered some insights into the profound impact artificial intelligence is likely to have on societies that possess this technology, along with its enabling technologies, and those societies that do not. In today's podcast, I'll try to expand on this issue further. I'll talk about artificial intelligence and the surveillance state, surveillance capitalism, and more about the impacts technologies of the fourth industrial revolution are likely to have on the individual and society. Let's get started. The dream of a ubiquitous internet that connects all the peoples of the world is rapidly melting away. Last week, as expected, American companies were given notice by the U.S. administration to disassociate themselves from the Chinese social media company ByteDance, parent of TikTok, as well as from the messaging company WeChat. This is an ominous sign, and one thing is certain: there will be more such announcements to come. There are various perspectives on whether or not this is strategically the right thing to do in service of America's interests. In fact, some will argue that it's only fair to restrict Chinese internet companies from operating in the US since, after all, the Chinese state does not allow American internet companies such as Amazon, Facebook, or Google to operate in their country. When we consider how large the Chinese consumer market is and how lucrative data about these consumers is, the lack of access granted to America's internet giants is arguably a significant economic setback. And thus, the administration's response seems quite fair. Additionally, China's sophistication in artificial intelligence is now of a very advanced degree, and given the rapidly escalating concerns in Western capitals about the Chinese Communist Party's rogue behavior on the world stage, possessing such sensitive data about Americans in their systems has become too dangerous. China is actively developing the infrastructure of state surveillance using artificial intelligence. They currently have 200 million cameras deployed around China, and they plan to add 400 million more by the end of 2021. All of these cameras use artificial intelligence to monitor the society and enable a social credit score system that reprimands and punishes citizens for behaviors deemed unacceptable by the party. It is a system with no checks and balances and no recourse, and is not something palatable in the West. But nevertheless, the decision to ban ByteDance and WeChat, along with the earlier decision to ban Huawei, has left no doubt that America and China have now entered a new Cold War. The two countries are erecting a technological iron curtain that will have far-reaching consequences. As expected, some of these consequences will be good, and some less so. If the U.S. is able to resurrect its frayed Western alliances, This is very likely under a centrist Biden administration. Then America and the West will likely move together in one technological direction, whereas China and its Belt and Road partners will move in another. Belt and Road is a 21st century reincarnation of the ancient trading routes known as the Silk Road. This divergence of technological direction is very worrisome for the Chinese state. Their Belt and Road partners in Asia and Africa are largely developing economies, and thus financing for their technological backbone and other infrastructure must come from China. But the Communist Party's plan was to sell the same technological infrastructure to the wealthy West and draw upon the economic returns from these sales, along with the monetization of American consumer data, to fund the infrastructure development in Asia and Africa. The ultimate goal of the Chinese Belt and Road model was to establish influence and control, or economic hegemony, over so many emerging and now indebted protectorates and vassal states across Asia and Africa. Unfortunately for the CCP, the U.S. Congress's bipartisan rejection of China's global wolf warrior diplomacy, the Chinese military's suppression of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations rights in the South China Sea, the so-called Nine-Dash Line, the CCP's assault on the One Country, Two Systems governance agreement in Hong Kong, the CCP's aggression towards Taiwan, and finally, the Chinese state's incarceration of 1.5 million Uyghur and Turkic people in Xinjiang has done near irreparable damage to China's reputation across the Western world. These actions have shown that the CCP cannot be trusted. They have shown that granting China admission in the WTO in the hope of bringing them into the fold of responsible nations has been a strategic mistake and failure. But it's not all bad news. I would argue that having a strong and viable ideological foe during the Cold War with the USSR served the cause of democracy quite well. It kept Western leaders and administrations on their toes as they tirelessly worked to demonstrate the superiority of democracy as an ideology of governance versus Leninism. It also provided the opportunity to demonstrate the potential for productivity and wealth creation within free market economies versus the potential of wealth creation in a centrally planned system. Perhaps the technological Cold War will create precisely the right environment the West now desperately needs to repair the damage that globalization has done to democracy and free markets over the past 30 years, following the collapse of the Soviet Union. Perhaps it will create the impetus for so many necessary reforms, including healthcare and income inequality, that are the cause of so much economic and political angst in the United States. The very angst that has been undermining democracy and free markets for the past 20 years and led to the rise of far-right nationalism. Only time will tell. Now let's turn our discussion to the implications of artificial intelligence on individuals and societies as the Fourth Industrial Revolution unfolds. As recently as 30,000 years ago, there were at least 6 other species of the genus Homo roaming the earth and foraging for food alongside Homo sapiens. But then, each of the other species began to disappear, and eventually only one species survived. This is very unusual. In most other mammals, there are a number of species. For example, there are black bears, brown bears, grizzly bears, panda bears, polar bears, and a number of other species of bears as well. There is very strong evidence that Homo sapiens underwent a dramatic change about 70,000 years ago. This was an event known as the cognitive revolution. After this, Sapiens rocketed to the top of the food chain and became highly impactful upon their environment. If we fast forward now to 12,000 years ago, and then proceed forward from this time, we find that there is only one species of the genus Homo throughout this period, the Homo sapiens. That's us. But within Homo sapiens, we do see quite a bit of variance. For example, some Homo sapiens are bigger, stronger, taller, and more intelligent than other members of the species. Scientifically, there may be several reasons for these variations, but certainly a key factor for these variances is that they may be the result of better nutrition and more abundant, higher quality food. In present times, the physical and mental variations within our species may be further exacerbated by the environment of the home in which the children are raised, as well as by the education and healthcare systems that families are able to provide for them. Some children are now raised in homes where, in addition to superior teachers, academic facilities, and technology, they also have access to tutors who can better prepare them for admission into the best private schools and colleges. The numerous differences in the home environment, in the academic environment, and in the overall community have a very significant and noticeable impact on the success rate for young people in society. In the 21st century, with the rapid advancement in artificial intelligence and its enabling technologies, we can expect to see an ever greater chasm opening up between students emanating from the desirable neighborhoods and academic settings versus those from socioeconomically disadvantaged communities. Neuralink, a company started by Tesla and SpaceX founder Elon Musk, is actively pursuing brain-machine interfaces. These interfaces will enable human thoughts and questions to be translated at internet speeds into queries that go out over cyberspace and return responses over these high-speed wireless networks in an undetectable fashion. Consider for a moment the students that begin to receive such implants at a very young age and become accustomed to receiving periodic upgrades to new software and hardware technology for increased performance, versus those students that do not have the means to be included in education systems where such technology-based learning and education is taking place. Humankind was already bifurcated into two groups: those with better home, school, and community environments, better healthcare and stable homes, versus those without these advantages. Now this chasm will be opened ever wider because the young people with access to Neuralink or similar implants, enhancement systems that essentially turn humans into cybernetic organisms or cyborgs, will be so far advanced relative to those that don't, that they will not be able to function effectively in the same environment. We are already living in an environment where jobs involving manual, repetitive labor are being rapidly displaced by automation and robotics. In the past, we could transition from these jobs. If we were young enough, we could acquire new skills and then move into jobs that required a greater degree of cognitive ability. But today, even many of the jobs requiring considerable cognitive ability are rapidly being displaced by deep learning neural networks. In this future scenario, the only jobs available for humans will require them to have already been upgraded and well adapted to brain-machine interfaces and function as very experienced cybernetic organisms or cyborgs. It's not hard to see that it's quickly becoming impossible for disadvantaged humans to ever catch up. What will be the fate of so many millions of permanently disadvantaged people? Will they suffer the same fate of so many other hominins from the past, like Homo erectus and Homo neanderthalensis? It is critical that political leaders, thought leaders and thinkers in our society reflect upon the future as artificial intelligence and its enabling technologies take society to a point of no return. We need to plan for our future. We don't want to find ourselves in a situation that we cannot manage and that can have such profound impacts. Not having a plan for such a highly likely eventuality may have catastrophic outcomes for society overall. Thank you for spending some time with me. I'm trying to follow the TED Talk format, and so I'm keeping these podcasts to about 20 minutes. Let me know what you think. I hope you'll find these insights into artificial intelligence helpful, and I hope you'll read my new book, The Genome Affair. Until next time then, this has been the AI and You podcast with author Vicar Saidi.